Dr. Karen Hardy. I'm the CEO and Chief Risk Officer for Strategic Leadership Advisors. I'm also the author of Enterprise Risk Management, a guide for government professionals. It's an absolute pleasure to speak with you today about constructively disrupting Caribbean economies. I specifically want to talk to you about creating the roadmap from gloom to boom, building resilience and sustainability in Caribbean economies. You know, while COVID presents us with many challenges, it is certainly not the last challenge we will face. And the idea of a new normal is not just a result of catastrophic events like a pandemic, but also whenever an organization mismanages or underestimates a risk. Even then, there is an adjustment in the way they perceive things moving forward. And hopefully that perception is driven by lessons learned. A case in point about pivoting from events that disrupt our normal flow of business operation is an organization known as the National Institutes of Health in the United States. You know, resiliency and sustainability is important for any organization, even some of the best performing and organizations with even some of the best reputations, especially in government. This is a headline from 2006, which read, NIH, which is the National Institutes of Health, under fire. Longtime favorite of Congress, as it appeared on the front page of the Washington Post and in the Wall Street Journal. The NIH was under fire from Congress with evidence of staff engaging in secret outside contracts and consultancies. The director at the time acknowledged the problem at a hearing to the House Oversight Subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and then began to issue a series of reforms to bring the NIH researchers in line with government guidelines as it relates to outside activities. Apparently, the prior director had waived conflicts of interest guidelines, apparently believing that scientists have special entitlements and are less given to greed and temptation than other individuals. So the National Institutes of Health is a multi-billion-dollar research agency, and it has a lot of influence and a lot of resources to do good for the nation and for taxpayers. And it had long been a favorite of the Hill of Congress, and they often got favorable outcomes when it came to resources and budgets. But even the best of organizations have to learn from their mistakes. And in this instance, the NIH decided to make some major reforms to address this particular problem. Now, at the time, I was actually brought on board at the NIH to actually build up their enterprise risk management function as a result of this particular event that took place in 2006. And one of the most telling and memorable lessons learned from this experience was the fact that the leader and director of NIH at the time asked one fundamental question that every organization, especially in the public sector, needs to ask themselves. And that question is this: what can we do to get ahead of these things? At that time, NIH appeared on the front page of the Washington Post, and the director at the time wanted to know, how can we get ahead of these things? How can we ensure that these things are emerging issues that we need to take care of now before it blows up to be something much bigger? In this case, with NIH and the conflicts of interest with the researchers, it became much, much bigger. And as a result, I was on the team to help do a risk assessment to look at conflicts of interest as an enterprise risk at the National Institutes of Health. One of the things that we have learned and seen from the National Institutes of Health is that organizations need to get ahead of the problem. That was the question that leadership asked. But unfortunately, it was a question that was asked after everything exploded or imploded. But it's a key question. What can we do to get ahead of these things? And actually linking enterprise risk management to economies is actually more common than you think within public organizations, especially in the U.S. public sector. Government agencies have pushed very, very hard to embed enterprise risk management practices into those public programs and investments to create that sustainability that is so important right now, and to create that resilience that is so important right now in the marketplace. And one specific organization that has done a stellar job making that connection between ERM and how it flows through an organization to influence sustainability and resilience is the United States Department of Commerce. So the mission of the Department of Commerce is to create the conditions. And that's very important to understand. It's to create the conditions for economic growth and opportunity. So how do you create conditions for economic growth and opportunity? And I believe that in order to do that, it starts with understanding what the organization values and then protecting that value through enterprise risk management. The U.S. Department of Commerce is a very important agency. It's one of the cabinet level agencies, and it has the ear of the president, whoever the president is at the time. And this agency department promotes job creation and economic growth. And the way it does that is through different type of avenues. One is by ensuring that there's fair and reciprocal trade, providing the data necessary to support commerce, and fostering innovation by setting standards and conducting foundational research and development. The Department of Commerce has over 45,000 employees spread across 50 states in every U.S. territory and in more than 86 countries. And this department provides companies and entrepreneurs invaluable tools through programs such as the Census and the National Weather Service and NOAA Fisheries and Foreign Commercial Service. And that's something to really think about. This one agency helps to promote job creation and economic growth. And it has avenues for doing this. And it supports U.S.-based companies and entrepreneurs with many invaluable tools, but it's done through delivery of programs, as I mentioned before. Enterprise risk management flows through programs that help create that resilience and that sustainability. So programs are the vehicles in which the Department of Commerce disperses their mission and their goals and their objectives. And it's not without integration of enterprise risk management practices into these big programs, such as the census, which is done every decade and counting everyone in the country. Okay, and ongoing census that look at the number of businesses and startups and the number of employees within organizations. It also connects to the National Weather Service and how weather impacts the operations of businesses during disasters or tracking disaster relief funds. Also through fisheries, which is a huge industry in terms of employing people regionally, and then for foreign commercial service. It also oversees, ocean and coastal navigation. It helps negotiate bilateral trade agreements. It enforces laws and ensure a level playing field for American businesses and workers. So the mission of the Department of Commerce is stellar. One of their main goals is to help sustain, create that resiliency in the market that leads to job creation and economic growth. But it is not without the flow of enterprise risk management pumping through these programs directed and targeted to achieve the departmental goals in those objectives. If we are to talk about resiliency and sustainability in the disruption of economies, well, there's no better agency within the U.S. federal government than the U.S. Department of Commerce to display and demonstrate how that is actually broken out and done. After all, it has a $7 billion budget that's spread across multiple organizations. And they find a way to prioritize and protect investments in core government functions, such as enforcing those trade laws and combating unfair trading practices, and also providing leadership in things such as space commerce, which has its own economy of projected to be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. And then also supporting the research and development in cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Not to mention sustaining the weather satellites, as I mentioned before, and forecasting information for significant weather events, and cutting red tape to help American businesses prosper. So that $7 billion budget for the Department of Commerce is spread amongst their varying agencies underneath the umbrella agency, and then actually tapping into all of these amazing investments and priorities. Some of the agencies that get some of this funding, the $7 billion, include the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is an independent principal federal statistical agency that promotes a better understanding of the U.S. economy by providing timely, relevant, and accurate economic accounts data in an objective and cost-effective manner. There's also the Bureau of Industry and Security, which advances the U.S. national security and foreign policy and economic objectives by ensuring an effective export control and treaty compliance system, and by promoting continued U.S. leadership in strategic technologies. Not to mention the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which was founded in 1901 and is now part of the Department of Commerce, one of the nation's oldest physical science laboratories. And they are very much involved in infrastructure and understanding the capabilities of technology at NIST. And then, of course, there's the Economic Development Administration, which was incepted 52 years ago. And it has led the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. Okay, now that we have a framework around what an organization looks like that must think about resilience and sustainability during these times of disruption, let's clarify what ERM, or what enterprise risk management is. To begin, let's talk about what enterprise risk management is not. That's how we get to what it really means. First of all, it is not about the collection of heat maps and toolboxes. Even though at some point in time heat maps and toolboxes, come into play, it is not one of the main um, descriptions or understanding of what true enterprise risk management is. It is not about the measurement of likelihood and impact, even though we use those two tools to help measure the impact as well as determining what the risk exposure is for organization. That's important, but enterprise risk management is not about measurement of likelihood and impact. It is not about having C-suite meetings to talk about how important ERM is, even though that sounds great, but ERM is more than having C-suite meetings on the agenda and talking about how important it is. It is not project management. Some people still try to leverage project management and project risk management as a platform for scaling it to enterprise risk management. But enterprise risk management is not project risk management. And finally, it is not about dashboards and monthly report analysis. All those things are great. Those are tools to help inform visually leadership in terms of, the status of information when it comes to risk management. But enterprise risk management is not about dashboards and monthly reports. So taking this into account, what is enterprise risk management? Well, enterprise risk management really is about confidence. It's about confidence. I can't stretch that enough. Basically, how confident are you in your organization's ability to effectively identify and navigate the unfolding uncertainties surrounding your business model or strategic objectives? Enterprise risk management is about confidence. It supports the confidence of leaders, knowing that they have enterprise risk management within their organization is a rigorous process and a mindset or a set of behaviors. Helps to build leadership's confidence that they have the information that they need to make informed decisions within the organization. Now, the Department of Commerce, as an example, their enterprise risk management confidence is a result of having and knowing their organization's risk philosophy. So confidence for an organization comes from knowing your organization's risk philosophy and executing it throughout operations. So what is the risk philosophy of your organization? Has there been a philosophy defined? What is their premise when it comes to risk? How do they approach it? What is the lens in which they look at risk across the organization? The confidence of enterprise risk management is a direct link to the risk philosophy that's established within your organization, and not just stopping at establishing a philosophy and identifying a philosophy, but executing that philosophy in action throughout the day-to-day operations. So it's very important to have alignment of organizations' beliefs and their values with action. That's one of the sources of having the confidence that you need for enterprise risk management. So what is an example of an agency risk philosophy? Well, let's look at one of the agencies that I talked about earlier. For instance, they believe, as part of their philosophy, they believe that enterprise risk management process is applied across the agency. It's not sliced into silos, but it's actually applied across the agency. And having that cross-agency application really brings people to the table about discussions regarding enterprise risk management, which otherwise would not have happened in the absence of enterprise risk management. Another philosophy is that risk management practices at all levels are integrated into informed decision making. It's very important to understand that risk management to inform decision making is not just at the top of the peak of the pyramid. It also exists within the middle of the pyramid and even the lower quadrant of the pyramid. So instituting risk management practices at all levels within an organization means integrating it into informed decision making at every level of the organization, from the project manager, from the contract officer, from the C-suite executives. That's the philosophy within an agency. Also, a philosophical statement includes the fact that the organization believes that emerging risk shall be identified. Now, a lot of organizations overlook emerging risks. They only are pretty much concerned about the things that they do know rather than the things that they don't know but can know. That's the importance of emerging risk, and having a statement that includes the fact that you understand as an organization that what's on the horizon is much more important and valuable, even more so than what you actually know, can add a lot of weight to your risk philosophy. And then an agency believes that consistent and disciplined consideration and treatment of risk. Keywords of that risk management and ERM is consistent and it's disciplined consideration, meaning it's repeatable behaviors within an organization. And that's an example of how your risk philosophy is executed throughout day-to-day operations. It's consistency and it's disciplined consideration that no matter what the decision is, enterprise risk management is there to help support and facilitate that conversation and enrich that decision-making process throughout an organization. Which really leads to, we talked about, connecting value and philosophy statements to actions and beliefs within an organization. At the Department of Commerce, the question becomes, what is it that they value? And one of the best places to answer that question is to look at the strategic plan within that organization. As you can see here, the Department of Commerce has 5 high-level departmental goals, and each one of these goals pretty much articulates what's valuable to the organization. So for instance, this agency values advancements when it comes to innovation. They value strengthening intellectual property protections across the country. They believe in reducing and streamlining regulations. They value increases in U.S. exports, and they value increases towards investments into the United States. They also value enforcing the nation's trade laws and security laws and deploying public safety through broadband. Not to mention, they value the enhancements that's needed for the nation's cybersecurity. This agency also values, providing accurate data to support economic activity and engaging in commerce employees, as well as accelerating information technology modernization. So as part of this big $7 billion budget, it's broken down into these goals, which represent pretty much what an organization values, right? So the values are established and they are identified. And then you can see how each of the bureaus and organizations are across the entire department are engaged in one or more of these goals to help generate that discussion, that enterprise discussion within the organization. And then we also see that the enterprise risk management model is integrated into this strategy, the strategic goals and strategic objectives. What are the risks associated with the strategic objectives, right? What are those specific risks so that they can be managed? And when they are managed well and when those risks are identified, you're able to connect and help with the resiliency and sustainability piece of these programs and investments that really lead to inform and facilitate the agency's mission, which is job creation, right? And create economic conditions that are favorable, creating opportunities for everyone. So that enterprise risk management model integration, whether that's through COSO, ISO 31000, a hybrid model, or something different, actually feeds into that. And when it feeds into that, it helps to establish, the value of the goals and objectives of the organization, and shows how enterprise risk management protects the value of these goals. So when enterprise risk management is done right, when it's used to inform decisions and is used to help maintain the vigor behind meeting performance targets, the outcomes can be extremely beneficial. Again, the Department of Commerce is all about job creation, and which is a fundamental aspect of their particular mission. And they are positioned to create those conditions to facilitate job creation through a variety of tasks and projects and investments, including increasing exports and foreign direct investment, as I mentioned before. So as an example, when ERM works, when a disciplined approach to risk management is applied throughout all the levels of an organization, examples of great outcome includes having exports and foreign direct investments be a proven job generator. It was found in 2016, exported goods and services supported more than 10 million well-paying U.S. jobs. And in 2015, majority-owned U.S. affiliates of foreign companies directly employed 6.8 million Americans. So the work of the department continues to facilitate community efforts to attract investment and use the internet to create economic opportunities. So this is a great example of how ERM is a great benefit and can be a help to produce positive outcomes as it relates to strategy and strategic goals and strategic objectives. But when ERM is not engaged within an organization, there are a lot of things that can also go wrong. So when enterprise risk management is a non-factor, when it does not exist or is not enforced within an organization, a lot of bad things can happen. We have already seen how the NIH lost a lot of credibility and favorability amongst lawmakers and policymakers when they dealt with the conflict of interest event and crisis during that time. Another key loss that an impact that can happen to an agency when ERM is a non-factor, when it's not enforced or doesn't exist, is when the U.S. government personnel database was breached a few years back, and millions of individuals either working for the government or who have never accepted a job with the government or never worked for the government, the entire background check was compromised because the agency in charge of the database for background checks refused to pay attention to an emerging risk when it came to IT hacking legacy systems. And then, of course, we all are familiar with the incident that took place with Target back in 2013 when over 40 million credit cards were stolen from nearly 2,000 Target stores by accessing data on point-of-sale systems. So these are just a few of the stories of what happens when enterprise risk management is a non-factor, is either not enforced or does not exist within an organization. So what role has historical public policy mandates played in driving enterprise risk management in government and in public sector? I must add that having policies in place and having language and some type of terminology and expectations played a huge role in the United States government adopting enterprise risk management across their key agencies. And a lot of the public policy mandates really go back a little bit further than 1990, but one of the key uh, pieces of policy that have really pushed enterprise risk management forward really came out of the Chief Financial Officers community through the CFO Act of 1990. And the CFO Act of 1990 pretty much provided, for the major transformation of financial management and called for financial management systems to comply with certain types of standards. This act also established the CFO role within federal government agencies. Because of this act, 24 of the executive branch agencies are now required to have chief financial officers. This was a big move for government public policy in actually establishing accountability for CFOs. And this was in response to a lot of the Enron and a lot of the challenges that were taking place in private industry companies. So the government responded. And then in 1993, and just 3 years after the CFO Act, the government adopted the Government Performance and Results Act, which required agencies to clarify those missions and to set strategies and performance goals. This started to make the connection between strategic planning within government. It gave it more of a framework for actually managing strategy and instructing agencies on how to establish effective strategic plans. Now, prior to 2016, there were no enterprise risk management requirements for agencies within the U.S. government, which means that agencies who were interested in doing this could have done it, but it was not mandatory for any agency to adopt enterprise risk management. Even though we know that risk management in some areas was already being practiced, it just wasn't captured as risk management. It wasn't documented anywhere, and there were no requirements that it be done until 2016 with the issuance of OMB Circular A123. And that is the policy that I actually worked on and actually wrote parts of it to ensure that enterprise risk management was no longer an option. It was now a requirement. It was a requirement for those executive level agencies, and it requires those agencies to present and create risk profiles on an annual basis. And there's an accountability and continuity piece there, which is very important, which is why public policy is very important in pushing and supporting enterprise risk management. It holds people accountable. It holds leadership accountable. It sends a message that managing risk is important in the government. And without those public policy documents, it's very hard and difficult to get agencies to follow suit because there's so many competing priorities. And then we see that in 2014, the A123 was issued, in which I actually wrote the section that actually introduced the definition of enterprise risk management into the budget and performance arena for the federal government. So public policies can drive the need for enterprise risk management, and it is a critical part in actually adopting enterprise risk management so that organizations can be positioned across the entire enterprise to deal with the resiliencies and the sustainabilities which they're going to face. Because again, ERM is about confidence, and enterprise risk management helps leaders make decisions confidently. So in conclusion, what can we take away from this conversation that we had today? Well, there are a couple of things. We understand that ERM, or enterprise risk management, can play a role and creating sustainability and resilience during times of disruption with rigor and discipline. We understand that ERM is integrated and vested into the programs and investments that serve as extensions into an economy. We also understand that the effectiveness of ERM is only as good as the philosophy it is built upon, and there must be alignment of beliefs and values to action. Public policy can help build ERM momentum and accountability where continuity is essential. And finally, ERM is not a choice, not today. With so many changes in the landscape, increase in uncertainty, a lot of vulnerabilities, ambiguity, and chaos, we can't afford to leave our organizations at chance. Leaders must be confident about their organizations, and ERM helps build that confidence for leaders. Therefore, ERM is not a choice, but it is definitely a necessity as we move forward. I would like to thank you for spending time with me this morning. I really enjoy spending time with you. And if you're interested, there's a new book release that I have out. It's called Flip This Risk for Conversations. It's perfect for anyone who just need to be introduced to the idea of enterprise risk management, who may not be comfortable about having conversations around this topic. And you're trying to find an easy way to relate to leadership and others to bring them into the conversation. This is the book for you. If you are a fan of simplicity, I invite you to do so. Again, I'm Dr. Karen Hardy. It's been a pleasure spending time with you, and I'll see you.